Your episode release timing absolutely affects your show's visibility to your listeners, but probably not in the way that you think. So I'm going to unpack two truths and a lie for you regarding what time of day you should be publishing your episodes, and more importantly, what day of the week you should be publishing episodes based on your category. And I'll give you a surprisingly easy way to figure out what that day and what that time should be to give yourself the best chance of getting your show seen by the listeners who need it. Welcome to Insider Secrets to a Top 100 podcast. I'm your host, Courtney Elmer. Let's make your podcast binge-worthy. We recently had a listener write in and ask us this question, and they said, what metrics should I focus on to ensure that I'm releasing episodes at the right time? And this is a great question because it shows me that you as a host are really intentional about how you're approaching your podcast. And you're not just thinking about getting the episode out there, getting it published, getting it edited, creating the content and all of that side of things, but you're also thinking about, is there a way that I can optimize what I'm doing, presumably to help more listeners find my show? But I'll be the first to tell you, it's not the best question that you could be asking. But before I break all of that down for you, I've got three important things that I'm just chomping at the bit to share with you before I forget. The first being that I have a brand new way for you to send me your podcast questions. If you go to the show notes down below this episode, you'll see a link there. And when you click that link, you don't even have to leave your podcast app. Two options are going to pop up for you. The first is a text message. You could just right there from your phone as you're listening to an episode and it prompts a question for you, click that link, text me your question. You can send me your name. You can leave it anonymous. I don't care. What I care about is that you actually ask the question, because I promise you, if you are wondering whatever the question is, someone else listening to this show is wondering that too. So you're going to be doing yourself and them a favor. The second option is that you can send me a voicemail, which if your audio quality is halfway decent, I will actually air it on the show and I will give you and your podcast a shout out in my show notes. So again, that link is down below in the show notes for you. And huge thank you to Buzzsprout for updating this feature, by the way, because over the years, we have tried all different kinds of ways to collect questions from our listeners. And we have a running list of questions that people have asked me live on a workshop, or questions that people email us, voicemails that people have sent us that you've heard us feature here on the show before. So this has made it so easy. If you're hosting your podcast on Buzzsprout, I encourage you to use this feature. As hosts, we all know that the conversation can feel kind of one-sided. Like, meanwhile, your listener feels super connected to you and they love everything that you share, but you're kind of like, I feel like I'm talking to the four walls in my office every week. I would love to hear from my listeners. So this gives you a way to do that. And I would love to hear from you, because no matter where you're getting your answers about your podcast right now, there are two types of answers that you can get. The first is you can go ask your question to ChatGPT or to your podcasting friend or in a podcasting group, and you'll get some level of specificity, and here's what I've done and here's what I've found works, but it's not going to be hyper specific to your podcast. So that's the benefit of asking a question to me directly. If you want a direct answer, that is, from a podcasting strategist who has helped over 70 shows launch in the top 100 and show up at the top of search, and more than 4x their downloads from applying the pod launch methodology to their shows. And I would love to be the person to give you the direct answer that you are looking for, personalized to your podcast, that you haven't been able to get anywhere else. That's thing number one. Thing number two, this is something that I'm going to be completely frank with you here. I have tried to record this episode no less than a dozen times now. That's not something that I normally would admit. And the truth is, because every time I get to this part, I just kind of don't know what words are coming out of my mouth. Why? Because it's messy and it's vulnerable and it's uncomfortable for me. And the truth is that you see me put this show out every single week. And you might have listened to the show for some length of time. You might be familiar with the brand that I've built in the podcasting space. You might know me personally. You might be a client. You might be a friend. You might be a colleague. And you're listening to this right now. And you're probably like, what the heck, Courtney? What is going on? What are you about to say? And the reality is I'm really good at masking. And I am really good at keeping up, I'll call it a facade, even though it's not meant to be deceiving in any sort of way whatsoever. But I'm really good at making people think like I've got it all together. And the reality is I don't. I have been in the middle of a major shift in my business over the last 3 months or so. And it's causing me to rethink my future, my career, my podcast. It's causing me to re-engineer some things that I do here on the show. And hopefully all for the better. I really do believe all of this is moving me toward the greater purpose for which I've been created. But I'm in the messy middle of that right now. And as I've shared this here and there in little snippets with different people, conversations that I've had with clients and colleagues over the last week or two, I have had more than one person tell me, like, you need to be documenting this somewhere, Courtney. Like, we would love to be a fly on your wall and learn from what you're going through. And I brush it off in those conversations because I'm like, LOL, how on earth would you seeing me figure out the messy middle of navigating all of these changes and all of this stuff be valuable for you? Like, I just want to figure out the lessons that I need to learn and then turn around and teach those to you because that's what I'm known for. That's been my MO for the last 8 years that I've been running this business. But it has taught me a couple of things just in these little conversations and the insights that I've gotten from that, which is number one, value is in the eye of the beholder. And I'm not the one who gets to decide what's valuable. So if you feel like you would love to get to know me in a more real way and have an inside look at what I'm working through as a CEO and as a podcaster, as I'm figuring out my next big moves in real time, then this is me taking you up on that challenge. And I'm going to rise to the occasion. Because thing number two is that I'm not someone to shy away from a challenge. So I appreciate being challenged in this way. And in response, I have started a Substack where I'm going to be sharing all of the messy middle of this with you and probably more. But for now, we're just going to start with the messy stuff. This is not going to be perfect. This is not going to be polished. This is going to be more of like, hey, this is what I'm navigating right now. This is what I'm thinking about it. These are the questions I'm asking myself. And here's what this looks like in real time for me. So if that would be interesting to you and you would like to be part of this journey and to go behind the scenes with me in that way, then go to CourtneyElmer.substack.com, sign up. And look, if I get at least 5 people to sign up in the next 5 days, this is a low bar that I'm setting here, but it's intentional because I'm making myself do, I am making a commitment to you right now. 5 people who sign up in the next 5 days, I will share my first post with you next week about what happened to my business in Q1 that is making me rethink my entire approach to podcasting, hopefully for the better. So that's thing number 2. Thing number 3 is a huge thank you to our sponsor, Resonate Recordings, who is really doing some groundbreaking work in the podcast production agency space. I've been a long time card-carrying member of the podcasting industry, and I am so excited to see the innovation that they are bringing to podcast production because this area of podcasting is long overdue for an overhaul. So if you're someone who's putting out episodes week after week after week, but you're still not seeing the increase in listeners that you expected by now, and you're not getting any leads or sales from your show or sponsors approaching you being like, here, we would love to give you some money, then head to the show notes and book a strategy call with their team. They will sit down with you. They will help you pinpoint where you might be losing listeners. They'll help you figure out where there are gaps in your podcasting funnel. And most importantly, they will help you develop a plan to fix it. Because speaking of podcast funnels, or whatever you want to call it, podcast funnel, listener journey, at the end of the day, all we're doing in podcasting is connecting content with listeners who need it. I know I'm oversimplifying it, but at the end of the day, that is it. That it is that simple. And so therefore we go about this in a simplistic way under the false assumption or the false expectation that it should be easy because it is simple. But we all know, sitting here on the other side of the mic, no matter whether you've been doing this for 6 days or 6 months or 6 years, it is not easy. And so this is what leads us to ask questions like the one we got here today about, is there something I'm missing? Like, does it come down to episode timing? Does it come down to the day that I'm releasing episode? Like, what else can I possibly do to help people find my show? And so there is a bigger conversation that has to happen here around visibility, around discovery, around distribution. Distribution and discovery are 2 different things. You can put out content all day long, but that doesn't automatically create demand for that content. You can publish episodes to your RSS feed for the next 20 years. But if you don't know how to create demand for that content, if you don't know how to get that content seen, then it is going to be really hard to grow a podcast. Luckily, there are a lot of things you could do to increase visibility to your show. Some of the things that you might do require you to put in effort every single week. And then there are other things that you can do that don't require as much ongoing effort. And I call these your foundational elements of your podcast, the things that should be there regardless of what else you might be doing on an active, ongoing basis to market your podcast. The problem is I work with a lot of podcasters and I talk to a lot of podcasters and I see a lot of podcasters have gaps, not just in their podcasting funnel as a whole, but in terms of their podcast foundation. There are gaps in the foundation. So they're out there trying to build this show. And just like, if you were to build a house on a cracked foundation, I live in New Orleans. We build our houses on mud. We have to drive piles over 12 feet, 18, 20 feet into the ground just to have a strong enough foundation for the house to not collapse and fall over 10 years from now. And I'm not kidding. You can go look it up. It's ridiculous. But somehow we have functioned here for hundreds of years and we manage just fine. But it's because of the foundation. So what I'm about to share with you about episode timing is not a silver bullet. It is not an end-all be-all strategy. It is not a, hey, let me go do this one thing and you're going to get a bunch of listeners to your podcast tomorrow. But it will help you fix a crack in your podcasting foundation if this is a crack that you have. And I'll show you how to diagnose whether or not you have it. And the good thing about episode timing is that as a foundational element, it is something that you can set and forget. This is not something that's going to require ongoing time and effort from you. It's something that will require a few minutes of figuring out when the best day is in your category to publish. And then once you adjust your episode cadence to that timing, then that crack is fixed. And at that point, your brain can relax and then you can move on to other things that will help you increase your visibility for your show. Because when it comes to your show, we know there's a ton of work that goes into it. There's all the things that the listeners hear in terms of the content that they hear every week, but then there are the mountain of things that they don't hear and that they don't see and that they don't know that go into your show behind the scenes to make that content possible. Because in most cases, listeners are not going to care what time you drop your episodes. Just that you do. So thing number one to remember here is don't overthink your episode release timing as much as you think about and should worry about and be concerned about your episode release cadence. That is making sure that you release on the same day every week. Why? Because consistency is currency in the podcasting space. It is the currency of trust. But if you're sitting here going, okay, Courtney, yeah, but I know consistency is important. I've been podcasting for 6 months or a year or more, and I've never missed a week of putting out content, and I'm still stuck over here in less than 200 download per episode jail waiting on the growth to happen, and it ain't happening. What the industry failed to tell you was that consistency maintains a podcast. Consistency keeps your RSS feed alive. Some platforms care about that. Spotify cares about that. But consistency does not guarantee listener growth. And somewhere along the way, we shifted in the industry from consistency is important, and here's why. It's because it builds trust, it builds a listener habit, it keeps them coming back to your show, it sets clear expectations for your listener that can lead to listener loyalty. And somehow we just kind of like jumped the gun and assumed, oh, consistency therefore creates success. Consistency is all it takes to grow a podcast. No, it doesn't, because if it did, you'd have the growth you wanted by now, and we wouldn't be having this conversation. So this is where you got to understand the difference between distribution and discovery. And podcast growth can only happen when new listeners are hitting play on your show, following the show, and coming back to listen again every single day. So if you don't have a strategy for that, then no amount of new content you put out there is going to fix it. But I will say this, where consistency has its place is in signaling, number one, to podcast players, this is an active show. And number two, most importantly, signaling to your listeners, this is a host that you can trust to show up for you. If you publish here, there, and everywhere, that sets very unclear expectations for them. They will see you as not reliable and therefore not trustworthy. But when you publish on the same day at the same time every week, well, then that sets a very clear expectation of when they can expect you to show up for them and an expectation that you do show up for them when you say you will. And so they'll open their app on the day they expect your episode. They'll see your episode waiting for them. And then that repetition is going to start to build a habit of expecting your content, of coming back to your show. And that habit creates loyalty. And then this is where we get into those absolutes in podcasting, like, well, publish on the same day every week and don't miss a week. Yes, it's important, but understand why it's important. It's not going to grow your show just because you're consistent. So that is truth number one. Remember, I said 2 truths and a lie here. Consistency builds trust. Consistency doesn't equal growth. Truth number 2 is that the day that you publish your episodes does matter in terms of visibility, in terms of helping your listeners find your show and optimizing your show so that you're giving yourself every chance for listeners to find it. Because if you are in, let's say, the entrepreneur category, and everyone in your category, big podcasts, small podcasts, the majority of people in your category are publishing their episodes on a Tuesday, and you publish your episode on a Tuesday, then guess what? You have a lot more competition to compete with, not just because all these episodes are dropping on the same day and listeners are choosing what to listen to, but because from a platform perspective, there is a lot of supply and there's less demand because there's an oversupply. So what you want to do is you want to publish on a day that is not so crowded so that you can increase your chance of being seen. And I'm going to show you a very easy way to find the quietest day in your category. But first, let's talk about the lie. Because the lie is simply this, that the time of day that you publish your episode has no bearing on getting more listeners to your show. You can publish at 12 a.m., you can publish at 2 p.m., you can publish at 7 p.m. Just take a look around the world at all the people who are publishing podcasts across all the different time zones that we have, and yet these podcasts have listeners. So the time of day that you publish doesn't have any magical algorithmic powers to get your podcast seen by more people. So you pick the time, just pick a time that you can be consistent with. If you want your episode to be there every Wednesday when your listener wakes up because Wednesday is the quietest day in your category, then great. Schedule it to publish in the wee hours of the morning the night before. But the time that you publish doesn't matter as much as the day that you publish. As far as what metrics to look at to know if your strategy is working, unfortunately, there is no specific metric that will show you hey, yes, because you chose Tuesday at 2 p.m., this is the best possible time that you could be releasing this episode. But the point is, it doesn't matter because when you know that you're publishing on the quietest day in your category and that you're showing up on that day consistently at the same time, that's all you need to worry about. That is the foundational aspect that we need to have in place here. And there are two places that you can look to find out what the quietest day in your category is and use that info to guide your strategy. Because the quietest day in each category is going to be different. It's going to be different in entrepreneurship, in finance, in marketing, in after shows, in parenting. It's going to be different across every category. If you have an OSHA account, whether you are hosting your podcast there or whether you are using their PSO feature, then you can log in and they actually provide this data to you. This is new. They just added a new benchmark tab on the left-hand side that gives you this data. You click it, you select your primary category from the dropdown, and then scroll down to publishing schedule and notice which days are the busiest in your category and avoid those days. As a general rule of thumb, weekends are going to be the quietest. I only recommend publishing on a weekend if that is when your primary audience is most likely to listen. If your audience is more likely to listen on a weekday, then pick the quietest weekday. And I will tell you, oh my gosh, OSHA, first of all, thank you for putting this feature out there. Of course, I could go on a soapbox about how great the podcast SEO feature is and why you absolutely should be utilizing that for your show, but that'll be a different episode for a different day. As far as getting this information, figuring out the quietest day, I'll put our affiliate link below in the show notes for you, so that you can check that out. If you're not using OSHA and you don't want another tool to sign up for, I get it. There's another place that you can look, and that is in the actual categories themselves. Now, you will have to do the legwork of going into Apple and tallying which top shows are publishing on which days in your category to get a directional sense of which days are the most crowded in your category. But it can be done. If you are part of our Pod Launch Accelerator program, this is something that we do for you. More info on that in the show notes below too. But this is something that with a little bit of time and a little bit of effort, you can figure out yourself. So the question here to be asking isn't what time should I publish, but rather, am I giving myself the best chance to actually be seen? And am I taking the steps to plug these cracks in my podcast foundation so that even though this might be an incremental 1% adjustment, 1% adjustments added up over time can compound and be very, very effective. So when you can give yourself a leg up here by releasing episodes on the quietest day in your category and stay consistent in releasing your episodes every week on that day and time to build listener trust, then you can set it and forget it. That is all you have to do to optimize this one aspect of your show. And speaking of optimizing your show, there are a lot of things that you can do both inside of your episodes and around your podcast in terms of the marketing that you're doing for your show to help improve your visibility. This is one of those things. But in the next episode, I've got a very special guest who's joining me to unpack the emotional triggers that Disney builds into literally everything that they do to get people to take the next step that they want them to take. And if you've ever been to Disney or if you are a Disney fan, then you know that you can go there and somehow Disney knows how to get you to open your wallet and hand over your credit card and smile while you're doing it. It's amazing. It's mind-blowing. And it's all based on human psychology. So we're going to unpack that in the next episode and show you how you can apply this 1% change to your show to guide someone to actually hit follow, listen to your episodes, and come back for more. All that's coming up next to help you make your podcast binge-worthy.